Student Search and Seizure by Rich Campanelli. This presentation involves many aspects of what exactly search and seizure means, the laws, what can be determined subject to search, and other items to consider in a search and seizure procedure. The Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. School searches must be reasonable and have established reasonable grounds prior to search, meaning the search must turn up some evidence that the student has violated any laws or rules of the school. School searches must also be justifiable, and prior to initiating any searches must have circumstances that relate to any violations of any constitutional laws or rules. Probable cause. School officials need only reasonable suspicion to initiate a search. However, if law enforcement are involved, probable cause might be necessary before conducting any searches. If the student voluntarily consents, school officials or law enforcement can conduct a search without reasonable suspicion or probable cause. However, one thing to consider is that any searches do not violate any constitutional rights of the individual. Balancing the individual's rights and maintaining a safe and secure environment is a major challenge to school staff and officials. In the 1985 court case New Jersey v. TLO, the Supreme Court assured that searches conducted by school authorities are subject to the standards of the Fourth Amendment. However, warrants are considered unsuited for the school environment. Obtaining a warrant before a search can be deemed as interference with a swift and informal search procedure. There are many items that are subject to search on school grounds. When conducting a locker search, school officials must meet the standards of reasonable cause. Lockers can provide privacy for a student and also has a greater tendency to harbor items that violate school rules and regulations. Students should be informed of locker searches if reasonable suspicion is established. Book bag searches can be intrusive and also require stronger evidence before reasonable cause. Again, when conducting book bag searches, the school officials must meet the standards of the Fourth Amendment rights. Desks are also subject to search if school officials meet the standards of reasonable cause. Never search one's desk on a hunch. You should receive reliable information necessary prior to searching one's desk, and also inform the student of the search using written, concise policies. When conducting an automobile search on school property, it can be searched if reasonable suspicion is established. Both the student and parents should be informed by the school or district in regards to the automobile being searched. If parked off campus, probable cause must be established because there might be a necessity for law enforcement to become involved. If law enforcement is involved, they require a warrant prior to search. Can the student be searched? Searching a student is one of the most intrusive forms of search. This should be avoided unless under extreme circumstances. Searching a student should only be conducted if there is an established immediate threat. Probable cause should be regarded as a requirement in these particular situations. There are some additional things to consider before conducting a search. Prior knowledge and background of the student can play a role in these searches. Some items to consider about one's background. Previous experiences. Has the student habitually had these issues? Have they been subject to other searches? Do they have a running record of these searches? Is the evidence provided by others viable to these searches? Consistency and continuity are things to consider about your students. It is important to understand who your students are. Establishing a foundation of who exactly the student is can play a major factor in a search. In the aftermath of a search, it is important to formulate viable discipline policies and procedures after turning up evidence in a search. Some things to consider is the extent of what is found during these searches. Written notice should be required informing the student and the parents of any infraction and also giving them the opportunity to understand their rights under due process. Another question to consider is how should the discipline be handled? Based on the evidence and circumstances, should a short or long-term discipline be established? Meaning, should the student be suspended or expelled? Another question to consider is, based on the evidence that is turned up in these searches, should law enforcement be involved? All of these things are to be considered in the policies and procedures of a search. In the end, we all need to make sure we are maintaining a safe and secure school environment for all staff, students, and the community involved.